Hi, I'm Max Shapiro, CEO of People Connect. We help early stage startups build great teams, and we've been doing it successfully for 19 years. In addition to running People Connect, I put on Pitch Force, a series of weekly pitch events where early stage startups who are looking to raise anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million pitch to a panel of angels and VCs. I'm here today with Nathan Gold, the demo coach. Nathan goes all over the world helping early stage startups build great PowerPoint presentations. When you're creating your presentation, what we suggest is the first thing that you do is sit down and write out 600 words. We speak 150 words a minute. So if you write out 600 words, that pitch is going to be within 4 minutes. Once the pitch is done, then you can put the graphics to it. And one very important thing is you need to practice. Videotape yourself. Give your pitch to your friends, to colleagues. Back in 1960, the first presidential press conference was held by JFK. It was a huge success. He practiced very hard before it, and afterwards people criticized him because he practiced so much. Well, what's wrong with that? How are you going to get to be great at anything unless you practice and get comfortable with it? Now let's talk about the 8 points that you need to cover. First, introduce yourself. Say your name slowly and clearly and the name of your company. Then we want to talk about product and service.
That's number 2. Number 2 is your product or your service. And this is where you want to have 1, maybe 2 sentences to describe very clearly and succinctly what it is your product or service does. How your solution is unique or superior to the competition is also something you can mention at this point, because that will help you stand out. And as Max has often said to me, the listener on the panel should not have to guess what you do after you tell them what your product or service does.
Yeah. So you want to keep it brief and not too technical.
Right.
Point number 3 is your management team. We bet on the jockey, so it's important that we know about you and we know about your team.
And remember that because investors are meeting you for the very first time, you really need to establish your credibility early, which is why the team is up at this point in the deck. So go along the lines of why you, why your team. This is a perfect place for you to bring in your story. Don't make it a long story, of course, but a relevant story, 30 seconds maybe, 45 seconds about why you and your team. And that will let the jury in on who you are. It obviously will give you a chance to get personal as well. But make sure that we hear part of your story, because the truth is, your story is what's going to help you stand out against any competition that exists anywhere in the world.
And tell us why you created this business. What was behind it? That's part of your story as well. Point number 4 is tell us about who your target customers are and what your solution is. Who do you sell to? Why are they interested in your product?
And you want to make sure that the customer is always focused on this section, of course. You want to talk about why would your customer choose you over the competitors? And give an example of why you are the better solution. This is a perfect place, again, to bring in your stories of your customers and maybe give a story of a typical customer and how the solution really solves their problem.
And with graphically here, if you have a great testimonial, that helps a lot. And I don't want the testimonial to say Jay Smith, Dubuque, Iowa. It needs to say John Smith, VP of sales for whatever that company is.
Yeah, and make that one authentic. It has to sound real, because too many of them sound like you've made them up.
Number 5 is current traction and market potential. We want to know where you are, how many customers you've got, what your pipeline looks like, and be honest with us. Don't exaggerate.
It's really important that you demonstrate your traction, whether it's actual sales, actual customer meetings. You need to let the judges and the jury who are listening to you know that you've been out there talking to customers, especially if you're in the earlier stages. By the time you get to the Pitch Force event, you'll likely have some customers. So it should be easy for you to draw on those stories to illustrate why those customers are using your product. And traction means almost everything to an investor when it comes to them sticking their hands in their pockets to take the money out. Potential, of course, but if you can prove traction, to them, that shows validity for your business, your product, or your service.
And also talk about your TAM, talk about your SAM. Let us know what the market potential is for this business.
Indeed. And please don't make the grammatical mistake that I see so many people doing on stage, which is And let me give you the bottoms-up approach towards our no, it's not a bottoms-up approach. It's a bottom-up. So if you don't understand the difference between top-down and bottom-up approach to telling somebody about your market, please look that up. Don't get up there and just say, we have 5 million, the number of people we can address is 5 million, and that means a $50 million business. That's just a top-down. You need to build it up from the bottom.
And what I hear sometimes, which does not resonate at all with the panelists, if we only get 4% of the market, we're going to be a $500 million company in 2 years. Yes. That ain't happening, and people don't want to hear it that way.
I've heard some investors call that one of the top 10 lies that entrepreneurs give, is they say, we have a $100 billion big market here, and if we just get 1%, we'll be a blah, blah, blah. And they don't believe those numbers. They don't believe them. So don't use them. And don't also use words like huge, massive, humongous. If you didn't have a huge, massive, and humongous market to go after, you wouldn't be standing in front of them anyway. So use a number if you can. Okay, number 6 is your revenue model. And this is a really key point for investors. They need to know how you're going to make money. And you can't use the Twitter excuse that says, oh, we'll just get a whole bunch of people and then we'll figure out we'll make money later on. That excuse doesn't work anymore. You need to give them some idea. And if you have some numbers that you can put on the table, they can do some very quick math in their heads. So make sure you give some indication on how you're planning to make money. As an example, if you have a subscription-based business, perhaps you just start with the word subscription and tell people about your monthly subscription and your yearly subscription revenue plans. And then you're going to need to think about your 5-year projection.
And what I like to see in a 5-year projection is something very simple. All I want to see is the 5 years across the top, and down this left side is revenue, expenses, EBITDA. And that 5th year number for your bottom line and your top line should be a big number. You can't just make it up. It's got to be real. But don't make this mistake that I've seen people do in the past. They get up there, they show their 5-year projection, and they pause and they say, and these are very conservative numbers. No, they're not. They're pie in the sky. But after you put those up, if you say, can I guarantee you we're going to hit these numbers? Absolutely not. But with your investment and counsel and our doing the right blocking and tackling, we think we've got a chance.
And you can always handle that during Q&A. So don't make excuses during the presentation, like Max is saying, and wait for the Q&A for somebody to challenge you on the number that you put up there, either as being too big, too small, or just right, and then you can add context to it. So Max, before we leave this 5-year projection, do you also like when people call out a break-even or a profitability expectation?
I do and I don't. I think it's important, but for most investors, they don't care about break-even. They want you shooting to the moon and getting to that hockey stick.
Okay, all right.
Okay, number 7 is your ask. Tell people how much money you're looking for, and also tell them what you expect the deal to look like. So to say that we're raising $1 million on a convertible note with a 20% discount, a $4 million cap, that's a good, simple way to do it.
Are you okay with people not necessarily being specific on the amount of money? Because I often get people saying to me, hey, listen, I don't want to tell people what I'm raising in public. I'll be happy to tell them behind closed doors or through a Q&A, but how do you feel about that in a public situation?
Right. At Pitch Force, the panelists like to know how much money they're raising. But what you don't have to do is you don't have to say what your valuation is, what the pre-money is or what the cap is on a convertible note. It's okay to say what we're trying to do is create a win-win situation, and I would love to talk to you about that offline. I want you to win as the investor. We want to have a chance to win as the entrepreneur.
Great. And I often tell people, if you're not raising money today, perhaps you just closed a round last week, but you're still going through with your commitment at Pitchforce because you want to get in front of more investors and continue to expand your network. I always feel that it's all right, using the right tone of voice, to tell the panel you're not raising money today and why, but make sure that you have some sort of an ask that you can ask them for, whether it's advice. Maybe they're looking for office space for a couple of months. Maybe they want a hug. I don't know. But you're not just pitching at Pitchforce to pitch. You're pitching for something. And if you've just raised your money, maybe you say, we're very fortunate. We closed our round last week. But I'll tell you what we could use you investors for is we are really struggling with this and this. And that's what we're here for tonight, is to meet people like you who can help us with that area. So be clear and make sure that you you let them know what they can do to help you. And if they like you, they just might.
I agree with that. And the other thing you can ask for is introductions. Introductions to strategic, to potential customers.
Of course. That's probably one of the best things you can get out of this is if you're not raising money, or even if you are raising money, of course, if you can leverage your rapport you have with the panel or with the people in the audience of Pitchforce, you just might be able to ask for that introduction, and that could be the change of your business. Now your business changes for a trajectory that you couldn't even have hoped for. So remember, it's not all about raising money. Most of you are probably there to raise money, but if you're not, it's okay.
The last point is exit. I don't see enough entrepreneurs thinking about the catchers. You're the pitcher, you're pitching. The people on the other side are thinking about WIIFM. What's in it for me? You need to be able to say, we think that in 3 to 5 years we'll be a great target for acquisition by these companies. We have contacts with people in those companies already, and you as the investor have a chance for a 10x return or a 7x return or a 15x return.
Mm-hmm. And the only thing I want to add to the last slide or the ending of your presentation is to talk about the ending. Too many times I see people get up there and they get their ask out on the table and they say, and that's it. That's it?
Yeah.
That's it. So please don't end so abruptly like that. Be sure and let the people know that you're finished. A simple thank you, or I appreciate your time and I'm open for questions now. And that is enough for us to know that, okay, we can now change up and start having a dialogue. So remember, you have 4 minutes, and Max is going to get you off that stage in that 4-minute mark. If you're not wrapping up right there at that 4-minute mark, you might not finish what you've planned to say. So I recommend you plan for a little less than that 4 minutes, and be sure at the end that you wrap up. Keep your eye on that clock.
Absolutely. And another thing I like to see at the end is I like the entrepreneurs to say, we would love to have you help us on this journey. And then make sure your last slide has your name, your email address, and your company logo so that during the Q&A and the feedback, people know how to get in touch with you.
Yes, I've seen people taking their phones out to take pictures of your last slide.
Yes.
And if the last slide doesn't have their contact information on it, they can't forward it or get back to them. So that's a great tip.
Yeah, and also when the pitch is over, don't be afraid to go up and ask the panelists if they would take a meeting with you.
So to conclude this, Max, for our guests, I suppose what I'd just like to tell them is don't overthink this. Don't plan for exactly 3 minutes and 58 seconds on the clock, because when you get up in front of a real panel of people, things change. You might not breathe as well as you normally breathe when you're presenting in your own office. So plan for about 3 minutes, 50-ish seconds, 3:45 to give you some float time when you actually get up there. And try to have some fun with this presentation. Don't be so serious. Get up there and really transfer your enthusiasm for what you're doing to that panel. And then they will be more engaged with you. Now, in terms of the 8 points that we've just given you, I want you to realize that this is a suggestion. Obviously, Max and his panel are very, very accustomed to hearing those 8 points, and it's what they're listening for. So whether you cover them exactly in the order that we have suggested, or whether you mix and match them, or whether you take, let's say, another rubric from some other company out there and mix and match your own in there, I guess it's okay for them to do that. You just run the risk of confusing some of the panelists. So I recommend you start with the 8. If it doesn't tell your first story, then maybe you slip 1 or 2 more in there. Maybe 7 and 8 get reversed, 6 and 8 get reversed, but make sure that you tell your story. And the most important thing is when you're done, you feel and know that your enthusiasm, your passion, your excitement, whatever you call it, is transferred to the panel as well as to the people standing behind you.
And in terms of telling your story, one thing I want to add is I often hear presenters giving a pitch at about this pace, and it's clear that they're rushing to get through in the 4 minutes. Don't do that. No. Slow down. If it's 600 words, if you got to speak that fast, cut some words out. The best pitches I've heard are guys, it sounds like a guy or a gal is sitting around in someone's living room and just telling them what they do sort of at this pace and with this tone, instead of trying to have it rush through it and it's really clear that you're trying to talk and cover every point.
Yeah, this is not a race. This is a get your audience engaged, and speeding up what you say and saying more isn't necessarily going to do that. In fact, it often doesn't.
Right. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. We'd love to see you at a pitch for us. If we can help you find great people to build your company, please get in touch with me, Max Shapiro, max@peopleconnectstaffing.com. Thank you.